Hi, team. Welcome to the show today. So excited you're here. We are going to talk about relationships today in this episode and how to use a really simple strategy to create more ease and satisfaction in those relationships. Imagine just having fantastic rapport with people, great teamwork, cooperation, collaboration from everyone around you, essentially more buy-in from your people and better outcomes for everyone when it comes to your relationships. And these relationships can be in work. They might be at home with your family. They could be with your spouse or your kids. This really applies to anyone because we are all living in a relational world. One of the big struggles that we face in relationships is communication with others and simply getting along. There's conflict everywhere. And today we are going to look at that specifically through the lens of understanding our expectations and how the expectations that we have of others can negatively impact your outcomes with people. A few years ago, I listened to this incredible audio by Steve Chandler. He's very well known in the coaching space, and the topic of the audio was expectations versus agreements. Steve describes this difference between having expectations of people versus creating agreements with people. And I've talked about this on my Instagram page before. This has become a pillar in my communication strategies with people. And when I heard this audio, I really felt this topic intuitively at the time. But when I listened to him speak about this, I was blown away by how seemingly obvious it is, and also how very few people do this. What you see most of the time is people operating with expectations of the people around them. Parents have expectations of their kids. Spouses have expectations of each other. Leaders have expectations of their team. The list goes on and on and on. I think almost all of us can hear in our mind that little phrase, I expect you to. I remember hearing that phrase in multiple capacities in my life. Expectation is simply, I believe that you should do this or behave this way based on my belief about this circumstance. When you hear the word expectation, what comes up? For most people, there's this automatic resistance that flares because really no human wants to be told what to do at the heart of it, right? It causes this little sense of rebellion. Think about how you feel when you hear this. I expect you to act this way. That phrase, when I hear that, it brings up resistance in me. I feel that spirit of rebellion come up. Expectations are one-sided. They're created and imposed on another person by someone else. So that doesn't feel great to begin with. And they very rarely are communicated well to the other party. Most times people don't even know what's expected of them or what expectations are being held for them by the people they are in relationship with. And it becomes a really serious point of contention in a relationship because at the end of the day, there are really only two possible outcomes when it comes to expectations. One, you met my expectation and you should have, because by nature it's an expectation. So I'm neutral or at best satisfied or bored. Option two, you didn't meet my expectation. So now I'm frustrated or resentful, irritated, angry, disappointed in you. You can see both outcomes aren't great. And they definitely don't do much to improve trust or morale in the relationship. So if we summarize with expectations, you've got a sentiment that makes the other person want to rebel against you, communication is poor, and the two outcomes aren't that great. In contrast, you have agreements. Agreements look like having a discussion between both parties, where both parties are defining what they're saying yes to or agreeing to. They get to talk about the challenges that each one faces, what they're willing to do for each other, what they might need. There becomes a mutual understanding that is created in that space. And ultimately, at the end of the conversation, there is a yes given at the end. So both parties have buy-in. There's skin in the game. And again, there are two outcomes with agreements. One, you met the agreement, and so did I, and this is cause for celebration. This is a mutual win, and it helps to build that trust and rapport that you'd love to have in a powerful relationship. In the event that the agreement is not met, Okay, well, you now have a foundation to have a conversation about what went wrong. And it's a lot less likely that the other party will leave feeling misunderstood or defensive or resentful because the responsibility is truly on them for not holding up their end of the bargain. Expectations versus agreements. It's such a simple way to make people feel more valued and more highly considered when you are working together on something and you're creating agreements. In marriages, for example, this is such a game changer because one of the biggest killers of joy in a marriage is the expectations that we have of another person. And because expectations are often miscommunicated or not communicated at all, this can lead to huge rifts between people, resentment that's built up for years. This is what you see happening when people are keeping a scorecard in their marriage. It's expectations uncommunicated and unmet, and let's be honest, often unrealistic. Expectations lack that element of mutual respect. And therefore, people just don't feel very motivated to uphold those expectations. It doesn't feel good to have somebody hold a standard for you that you are not in agreement with. The same is true for our kids. And this was actually a major insight for me with my stepdaughters. When I listened to Steve Chandler's audio years ago, it was just a light bulb moment. There was a point in time when they were in their early tween years, just a few years ago, and it was becoming pretty frustrating. I didn't feel like I was able to get through to them. And there was a lot of frustration building up on both sides. The energy between us was there was a lot of conflict around those interactions. And it was because we were both pushing against brick walls with our expectations of each other, kids and parents. Primarily my expectations, to be honest. And I realized to be able to teach them how to be independent and have agency in their lives, but also be responsible humans, I had to ditch the expectations, team. I had to ditch the expectations and create agreements with them so that they could know what ownership felt like, what it looked like to take responsibility for their actions and their feelings, all the while having me trust them to hold up their end of the bargain. There were so many built-in lessons for both me and them just going through this process of creating an agreement. Now, did it always work out that they kept their agreements? No, but it allowed for us to have great conversations instead of conflict. It was learning and compassion, and it felt like a chance for them to experience personal responsibility in a gentle way, something that I feel is kind of missing in society in a big way right now. It just brought this completely different energy to my relationship with both girls, especially my oldest stepdaughter, who is now a teenager, and she's just really craving that independence and autonomy now. When you consider this idea of agreements versus expectations from a leadership point of view, I mean, damn, you can see how powerful this idea is. If you want more buy-in from a team, if you want to be able to influence people in a positive way, it is much more difficult to lead with expectations. There's not a lot of goodwill and positive energy when you're trying to motivate with a tool that spurs on feelings of rebellion or with outcomes that are mostly negative or neutral at best. Your ability as a leader to create agreements with people, that allows you the opportunity to create a self-managed team, one that is autonomous, one that is consistent and reliable, a team that you don't feel like you have to micromanage all the time. I mean, the exponential impact of that is just ridiculous when you think about it. And who doesn't want a company culture that is just better vibes all around? I think this is a powerful question. What would your life be like if you had no expectations at all? What if you had no expectations of your team or your spouse? What if you didn't have any expectations of your family members? What if you didn't have expectations about how your day would go or how the month would go? That might sound radical, but I don't think so, actually, especially when we really take into account what expectations are. I mean, what have we just been talking about? When I consider this question, I started to realize that dropping my expectations would lead to a much more stress-free life. I mean, really think about the expectations that you have in your day. I put a lot of thought into this and I realized I would feel lighter, more positive, more carefree because I wouldn't have preconceived notions and expectations about things in any which direction, whether it be positive or negative. I wouldn't have expectations about how my patients would be in the clinic that day, or how I'd feel in a workout, or how clean the house would be when I get home, or what kind of moods people should be in, or how much traffic there was in a day. It's actually pretty crazy how many expectations we have of things in our day that we're not even aware of. Our preconceived notions of how things should be and how things should go. And truthfully, when I started to consider releasing all of it, that started to feel really appealing to me. I started to see how I would be letting go a lot of the struggle that I experienced in my day just by letting go of expectations that I had. Like I could just show up in a situation and be open to what happens. I mean, it feels like a mind-blowing concept and a really powerful one. So my challenge to you this week is to think about the relationships in your life and consider, do I have expectations of my people, or have I been able to create agreements with them? Especially think about the relationships in your life that might feel riddled with conflict. If you have kids, think about what your interactions have been like with them lately. If you're keeping a scorecard in your marriage or constantly feeling let down or resentful, consider, do I have expectations or agreements with my person? It's worth thinking about as we all pursue a life that feels joyful and one where we have tremendous positive impact. I mean, that's really what it's all about. It's about having great impact. It's about feeling the good vibes in our life. Don't we all want that? I think so. In the expectations versus agreements conversation, it's been a total game changer for me. So thank you for listening. I hope you're having a great week. And as always, thank you for being ready to impact. Thanks for listening to Impact Ready. I hope today's episode inspired you to own your impact and recognize that you are powerful. By elevating our energy and awareness, we can create exponential change in this life. If you enjoyed today's insights, share them with a friend and subscribe to the show for more. I truly appreciate you. Thanks again for being here.